Good day everyone, I am Laika Pilisan Quinyanala from BSED English 1E and I will be discussing the Western concept of self. The Western concept of self. Ancient Grecian philosophers see humans as the bearers of irreplaceable values. In the medieval times, the philosopher in St. Thomas Aquinas believed that the body constitutes individuality. The individual was the focus of the Renaissance thought, with René Descartes' I think, therefore I am as the epitome of the Western idea of self. The Western tradition is generally acknowledged to be imbued with a style of thinking based on dichotomy and binary oppositions. There is an essential distinction between the notion of the subjects that stands in natural opposition to observable reality. The psychiatrist and Professor Frank Johnson outlined 4 categories on how the term self is used in Western contemporary traditions. The first one, analytical. It is a tendency to see the self as an aggregate of parts. The self is an observer, different and distinct from the external objects. Monotheistic. It involves the tendency towards unitary explanations and closed system view of self as molded after a unitary omnipotent power. Individualistic. It is a quality of Western thinking where self-expression and self-actualization are important ways of establishing who one is as well as finding satisfaction in the world. Materialistic or rationalistic. Western thinking tends to discredit explanations that do not use analytic deductive modes of thinking. Western philosophy is overwhelmingly argumentative. It tries to convince you of something primarily through a rational argument and logical syllogism, but occasionally through satire. In any case, it proceeds from the assumption that philosophy is a dialogue between 2 or more people who disagree. Western philosophy is naturally skeptical, rationalistic, and confrontational. A philosopher will typically create an entire philosophy based on the rejection and destruction of a previous system, just as logical positivism was an extremely reaction against Hegelian metaphysics, which in turn was offered as improvement to Kantian idealism, which finally in its turn was originally created as a response to the questions raised by skeptic David Hume. What is the self according to David Hume? Hume in this theory has put forward the premise of understanding the impression and identity we have of ourselves before we dwell into the questions of the self. According to Hume, as human beings we tend to think of ourselves as selves who are stable entities that exist over time, that no matter how closely we examine our own experiences, we never observe anything beyond a series of transient feelings, sensations, and impressions. Hume mentions that we cannot observe ourselves or what we are in a unified matter. There is no holistic impression of the self that ties our individual impressions together, which goes on to explain that we are never directly aware of ourselves, but only of what we are experiencing of a particular moment. He explains that even though the relations between our ideas, feelings, and so on and so forth can be traced through time by memory, there is no real evidence of any core that connects them in pure totality. In this light, David Hume suggests that the self is just a bundle of perceptions, like links in a chains. To look for a unifying self beyond those perceptions is like looking for a chain apart from the links that constitute it. Hume argues that our concept of the self is a result of our natural habit of attributing unified existence to any collection of associated parts. This belief is natural, but there is no logical support for it. The concept of self is, however, a highly contested topic, and in my opinion, there are numerous unresolved problems in Hume's philosophy of the self.